Favorite teacher gets wrongfully fired, so I get 3/4 of the staff arrested. I'll start off by saying this happened to my sister, and the actions taken were hers. My sister has always gotten along very well with her teachers, and has a habit of forming actual friendships with them, to the point that she still talks to her 5th grade English teacher, along with many others, decades later. This happened about 15 years ago. My sister was a student at Job Corps, a government-run live-on-campus vocational training program, studying hotel-motel management. She got on extremely well with her hotel-motel management teacher, better than pretty much every teacher she'd already had up to that point. One day, the teacher goes to the center's dean's office and walks in on a paper shredding session. It turned out that there was some pretty major embezzling happening at the center, as in more than 60% of the funds for the center were being stolen. The teacher was appalled, and despite some rather lucrative offers made, refused to join in on these acts. Less than a week later, the teacher was fired for trumped-up reasons. This was especially bad given the teacher was only 2 years away from retiring, and being fired lost their retirement package. Needless to say, my sister was pissed, knowing how things typically work and that almost any report she tried to make would just be swept under the rug if it was taken seriously at all. She came up with a plan and took things nuclear. Over the next month or two, my sister managed to gather some basic evidence of the embezzling. Nothing concrete, but enough to warrant considerable investigation by the authorities. She took the little evidence she was able to gather, along with the story of what happened to her teacher, and sent the info in an email to the Job Corps regional director. Now, like I said, she knew that her email would likely be ignored, or the event swept under the rug, so she got smart. The email was CC'd to every single major person in the Job Corps chain of command, all the way up to the national director, as well as to anyone even tangentially related to Job Corps in the upper echelons of the Department of Labor, and every member of Congress, as well as the U.S. President's office. Remember, this was a government-run program. All in all, the email was sent to over 2,000 people. Basically, she not only sent the report, but sent it in such a way that everyone who got it could also see everyone else who got it. And she sent it to way more people than would be needed to ensure the issue couldn't be swept under the rug. 2 weeks later, after the investigation finished, never seen the government work so fast on anything that wasn't collecting owed taxes. Only 5 or 6 staff members, out of 20-ish that worked in the center, still had their jobs, and at least 5 of the ones fired, including the dean, were facing major criminal charges, with the rest facing minor charges. I'm not sure of the exact figure on how much was stolen, but it was well into the 7 digits. The embezzling had been happening for years. The teacher got a very nice severance package post-investigation. IIRC, it was 3 years of pay, her full retirement package, and signing an NDA, though she didn't get her job back. And my sister was given her completion certificate, despite not having finished the requirements of the course. They wanted her gone, but couldn't kick her out. Story 2. You let him rape us. I set you up. Also, if the flare is wrong, sorry. Also, TLDR at end. Edit. The reason I put the sentences that are right below this is because I know myself, it sounds completely insane, and a few people will say it's fake. Trust, there is no one on this earth that wishes it was fake, more than me. If I could go back, I would go the neighbors sooner. But my reality is that I caused the death of my mom. I had to mature very early. I became like a surrogate to my sister for those last 3 years. I only wanted him to beat her up, he'd go to jail, and my mom get help. I never wanted her to die. First, this is a throwaway account. I will not be replying to comments. Take this as you will. This is my story of my revenge against my mother and rapist. First, our father passed away 4 years before all this started. Car crash. Maybe our lives would have been better if he hadn't died that day. Also, before I get into this, one thing you should know is before this man came into our lives, our mother was amazing. She was loving, supportive, and put us above everything. But she would soon replace us with her new man and her new meth habit. When I was around 9 and my little sister 7, our mom started dating this man. Let's call him POS. POS was tall and weighed about 250 pounds. He had oily brown hair and a face filled with sores. I didn't like him from the start. He made me uncomfortable, to say the least. A few months after they started dating, POS moved into our house. Everything was okay for the first few weeks, I guess. Then my mom started to act funny, staying up all night, not cooking us lunch or supper, not cleaning, snapping at us for no reason, and started hitting us. Our lives had been turned upside down by this man so quickly. Then one night he came into my bedroom, held me down, and raped me. I was screaming and crying for my mom, begging her to come help me, to come save me, please. And then I seen her, standing in the door watching him rape me. My mom was just letting him do this to me. She was just watching, like she was looking at a TV or something. When he finished and climbed off of me, he walked up to my mom, kissed her, and walked away with her. My mom just left me, crying and bleeding. I was just raped, and she allowed it to happen. Not long after they walked out, I hear them having sex in the living room. It was my 10th birthday. Happy birthday to me. A couple of nights later, I hear my little sister crying. I get out the bed to find my mom standing in her doorway. I run to the room to try to help her, and my mom sees me. She backhands me across the face, making me slam against the hallway wall. I can hear my sister crying and begging, with no one coming to help her. That day, that was the day, I started hating my mother. The rape and abuse went on for 3 years. I didn't know at the beginning, but soon found out. POS had gotten my mom using meth. POS and meth were the only important things in her life. My sister and I were nothing more than his play toys. I soon started noticing them arguing more and more about who got more hits. This one was stashing from the other one, and you smoked the last of it all by yourself. This is when I started planning my revenge. I noticed after about 3 days they would finally pass out and would sleep for almost 2, and their bag of meth would always be on the bedside table, beside POS. I know most would ask, why didn't you call the police or child welfare? Because jail wasn't enough. He might have raped us, but she betrayed us. She turned her back on us, and I wanted revenge and wanted her to suffer like we had. So every chance I got, I would move the bag, just at first, make it look tampered with. Then I started taking it from the bag and placing some on my mom's table. These things alone cause a lot of fighting. They started getting physical. I would keep my sister and I out of sight when this went on, and they never lasted long. Well, I continued to do this over a couple of months, taking more and more, flushing it or dropping it down the sink, until the last day. The last day I took the whole bag. It was a good amount. They had just re-upped, like they would say. I flushed the whole bag and locked my sister and I in my room and quietly prayed that they didn't realize it was me. I'm not sure how long after I did this that everything started, but we had watched like 3 Disney movies before they finally woke up. And then I heard him start yelling about his missing bag. The yelling got louder and more intense. Then I heard the breaking of objects. It was starting to getting bad now. I hear my mom go from angry to scared. I hear him hitting her begging him to stop, swearing she didn't touch it. He continues to hit and she continues to beg, begging him to stop hurting her, begging someone to come help her, begging like we begged her for so many nights. My sister started asking to leave. She was scared and crying. I opened my window, put my sister outside, and followed. We ran to the neighbors and told them that POS was beating our mom. The neighbor called the police and brought us inside, and we watched as the police pulled up to our house, start to walk up to the door, stop for a second, and then started yelling police and kicked the door open. After what felt like forever, we see POS being brought out to the police car. I wait to see my mom follow, but she doesn't. I see an ambulance pull up and the paramedics run in the gurney. A short time later, I see them rushing back with my mom. I catch a glimpse of her once beautiful face, now looking like ground meat. Her face was solid red, covered in blood. She ended up dying on the way to the hospital. I never planned to have my mother killed. I just wanted her to feel the pain we had been feeling for these last years. And I guess in the end she did. She felt the pain and terror we felt every night for the last 3 years. She just felt it all in one night. Do I feel bad about what I did? No, I don't. If I didn't do what I did, we would have been stuck there, being raped and beaten every day until one us would have died. POS was convicted of second-degree murder, possession of drug paraphernalia, I flushed the actual drugs, child pornography, pictures of us, and 23 counts of aggravated rape and 17 counts of aggravated rape against a person under 12 years of age. That last one is a death sentence where this all happened. We moved a few states over to be with our dad's parents. We hadn't seen them in almost 4 years, and for the first time in a long time, we actually felt safe. My sister still to this day doesn't know what I did, doesn't know that I played a big part in our mom's death, and since we never talk about either of them, it never comes up. We are both happily married now. I have 3 children, she has 2. Both of us are active members of our PTA. No one looking at us today would ever guess the hell we went through, or what I did to get us out of it. TLDR, our mom allowed her boyfriend to rape us for 3 years. They were hooked on meth. I made it look like mom was stealing it to make them fight. He ended up beating her to death. I didn't want her dead. That wasn't my intention. He is jail, and my little sister and I are finally happy. Story 3. I didn't go nuclear. I went supernova. This is my first post on here, so please bear with me. Just a little background to start off. I was an exterminator for better than a decade, and was only a few credits shy of a degree in entomology. Needless to say, I know my stuff when it comes to anything one might consider creepy and/or crawly. With all this being said, I was a specialist for the absolute worst kinds of infestations. I treated for bedbugs, small cousins to ticks that only drink human blood. I bet you think you know where this is going, and just to cut you off, no, I never intentionally infested anyone. In fact, the revenge in this story isn't even for me. It was for what turned out to be one of the sweetest women I have ever met. For the purpose of the story, we're going to call her Mary. She was a nurse in World War II. I was called out to Mary's home by the management of the subsidized apartments. She had complained about a small bug issue. What I found when I got there was not a small bug issue, and still haunts me a little to this day. When Mary answered the door, she was covered in bed bugs. Her hair, her clothes, even crawling on her hands. Without going into too much grisly detail about insect biology, this isn't normal. Bedbugs don't like touching human skin, and they don't hunt when people are up and moving. That is why the bed is the most prevalent place to find them, and thus the name. I immediately called an ambulance, waited on them to arrive, and warned them about the very real possibility that anywhere they took her would be in severe danger of being infested if they didn't do something to decontaminate her. The poor woman was suffering from anemia, and it was luck of biology that she hadn't gone into toxic shock from the number of bites she had received. When she was rushed off after having to be hosed off, literally sprayed with a hose, and having her clothes taken from her in semi-private, revenge mode started. Bedbug treatments are expensive, very expensive, and I had made a lot of contacts with local Department of Social Services and the Adult Protective Services because of the amount of charity of work I had done. Every single one of them got a phone call. Subsidized apartments have rules, including that they have to make routine checks. For an infestation to get to that level, it had gone unchecked for years. She had been being eaten alive for years. I called the local news, warned every neighbor, and collected statements about exactly how often the maintenance staff and management had entered the apartments. Once DSS and APS was done, I urged every single person who was put in jeopardy of infestation to file civil suits, and recommended a lawyer I had done some work for in the past. He was more than happy to take the cases as a class action suit. By the end, I had the manager of the apartments arrested for elderly abuse and neglect, and the entire staff from the top down fired. They had been falsifying paperwork saying they had been inside the apartments, performing routine maintenance, and generally scamming the government for services they didn't actually provide. I visited Mary for a while after that, checking in since it didn't seem anyone else had in a long time. She was a wonderful person, and she never deserved to have to live like that. Her health recovered for a while, but time eventually came for her. You'll never forget her, or forgive the people that allowed it to happen in the first place. Edit. Thank you all for the amazing feedback on this story. I never thought it would take off the way it did, and a special thank you to whoever gave the silver and golds. Yes, I now know there is a category for supernova revenge. Thanks for letting me know.